Hello, everyone. My name is Ellison, and I'm running for the United States Senate to represent your interests in the United States Congress. I want to thank you for taking the time to be here with us tonight for our Fridays for Florida virtual discussion on the impact of oil. This is something that I wanted to speak about tonight because it's something that we are dealing with each and every day here in Florida and around the United States. When we go to the stores, we have to put gas in our tanks, and we have been seeing gas prices fluctuate, mostly staying on the high side of things, causing people to have to change their spending behaviors. And so, what I wanted to do is, I wanted to give people a better understanding of why the prices of gas is as high as it is, and why it's fluctuating the way that it does, and what impacts oil, which is a primitive version of the gas that we use, why it's so powerful in our economy, and why it's so impactful in our daily society. For those of you who don't know, oil is literally in 70% of everything that you can see or experience. And as we talk a little further, we will talk about all of those things that we have to deal with from day to day that oil definitely impacts. We know that crude oil is the crown jewel of all of the commodities that exist in the world. We know that oil and the oil industry as a whole is a major economic powerhouse. And so that, we have to make sure that we are monitoring oil, its prices, the fluctuations. We have to monitor that very closely because it's so intricately woven into the fabric of our society, into the fabric of our economy. Right now, the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Russia are the top three oil producers globally. All three of them together make up 40% of all oil productions in the world as of 2020. And the thing is that right now we have levied, as a country, we have levied the largest sanctions, the most comprehensive sanctions the world has ever seen. We've levied those sanctions on Russia because of what Russia is doing in Ukraine. And so we generally get about 3 to 7% of our oil from Russia. Now, America is the world's largest oil producer, but we get so much oil from other countries because we are also a very large consumer of oil, crude oil, and its byproducts. And so, with the sanctions that President Biden placed on Russia, it was so impactful because not only was it the largest sanctions that we have ever placed, but we were able to get 30 other nations to place sanctions on Russia as well, which means that we won't be buying oil from Russia, and 30 other nations won't be buying oil from Russia as well. And what that does is it places a significant amount of demand on all of the other oil producers that we generally get oil from. And I wanted to give you a little background on some of those countries where we get our oil and where other countries get their oil from. And so the countries make up the oil cartel, which is OPEC. And those countries are Algeria, Angola, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Libya, Nigeria, the Republic of Congo, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Venezuela. These are all of the countries that make up the oil cartel, or OPEC, as some people understand that to be. And the problem with it is that OPEC, because they produce so much oil, I think it's something around 1.5 billion barrels of oil, because they produce so much and because so many countries depend on their oil, they're able to dictate and control pricing of that oil. And so when you have the United States and 30 other countries who are allied with us in this fight to make sure that Ukraine is not overtaken by Russia, we are placing a significant amount of strain or demand on the entire oil-rich community. And so in 2020, the breakdown of the use of petroleum is this. It was 66% went towards transportation. So earlier when I said that 70% of everything that you can see and experience is associated with oil production. That means the cars that we purchase, the trucks that transport goods and services up and down the nation's highways, the airlines, all of these transportation mechanisms depend on oil. And so the use of that petroleum represents 66% for the transportation industry. The impact of oil is so powerful that if the barrel of oil were to increase simply by $1, that would add a $2 million fuel expense to an airline. And what that means is that for every one of us that move around the country and the globe utilizing aircraft, then that means that we would have to pay more for tickets because the airline would then pass the buck on to the consumer, you and I. And so that's how it worked. 28% of the use of petroleum goes towards industrial use. 3% out of all the oil that comes into the United States, only 3% is used by residents or residential use, 2% commercial use, 1% electrical power. And so when you think about all of the electrical power grids and power stations around the country, out of all the oil, only 1% of that is actually fueling the nation's energy grid. And so what we have to look at is how can we rid ourselves of the dependence of something that is so volatile, something that is constantly going up because it doesn't ever go down. It's constantly going up over time. How do we get beyond the cost burden of the need for oil while at the same time trying to make sure that our environment is safe, because oil is one of those carbon byproducts of production that actually causes a great deal of pollution to go into our Earth's atmosphere. There's a lot of things that we could do to make sure that we are protecting our environment. And that's one of the reasons why I support the infrastructure bill, because part of the infrastructure bill was putting into place finances and resources to strengthen our smart energy grid, making sure that we can move away from the dependence of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels put a tremendous amount of carbon into the Earth's atmosphere and methane into the Earth's atmosphere, and all of these things that pollute our environment and ultimately make our global society warmer, which causes a ton of problems like earthquakes and water level rising in the sea, things like hurricanes, and all of these ecological problems. And so we have to look at how we depend on oil from a variety of different standpoints, not only just the cost burdens, but the ecological problems and the problems that we've had from waste, like spills, oil spills, and the marine life that it has had adverse impacts on. And so we live in Florida, and we have to deal with all of these issues. We have to deal with the threat of oil getting into our water system, especially when it comes to fracking off our shores. We have to deal with the idea that Florida is literally going underwater every year because of the fossil fuels that are being burnt into our atmosphere, and the polar ice caps are melting, causing our sea levels to rise, which also causes our sewer systems to swell and to spill out onto the America's streets. A lot of people don't realize this, but one thing leads to the next. And what happens is we're dealing with hundreds of thousands of tons of raw sewage floating onto America's streets. And it all goes back to the carbon footprint that is being put into the atmosphere based on fossil fuels. And so this is the situation that we are in. The other thing is there is a very strong correlation between the dollar and oil. Usually, whenever you have a situation where the value of the dollar decreases, what generally happens is the price of oil increases in order to keep up with the value or the market value of the dollar. There is a strong correlation. Oftentimes, it is the dollar that is being utilized whenever oil is being traded and sold on the market. And so we have to make sure that we understand these things, because quite oftentimes I see people pointing fingers at the president, pointing fingers at this group or that group, without truly understanding the impact of oil and the power that it has over our society. And so when we begin to understand this, then it boils down to supply and demand and geopolitical global impacts. Anytime that there is more people utilizing the oil because more people are being born each and every day in our global society, there will be a demand placed on the oil, and with that demand, we will have to pay more. I just don't see it going the other way around. When I was a kid, gas prices, I remember at the pump, were 89 cents. The other day I saw gas prices here in Florida, they were $4.19. And so over time, it has constantly gone up, which also means that everything that we purchase, or at least 70% of everything that we purchase, is also going to go up. And so if it means transporting bread, milk, eggs, if truckers are going to have to pay more at the pump, then that means we're going to have to pay more at the grocery stores. If airlines have to pay more for fuel costs, then that means we're going to have to pay more for airline tickets. And it's like that on every single turn. Oil is in the colors of the fabric that you wear. It is on the soles of your shoes. It is the tires on your cars. It is the combs that you use, the electric that you use to power your internet, to charge your cell phones. Almost everything that you look at around you, the bottle tops, the plastics, the asphalt, the tar that is used to cover the rooftops of your homes. All of this stuff comes from oil. And when the price of oil goes up, it will literally impact every aspect of our life. And I'll tell you this, the thing that's not going up is wages. Wages are not going up. And so if we continue to be dependent on a commodity that is constantly rising along with the rate of inflation, and our salaries are staying the same year in and year out, eventually we are going to be in a situation where we can't keep up. And all of these change agents and progressives who've been talking about a new Green Deal, and all of these progressives who have been talking about venturing into a clean energy economy, they're going to be the ones who are going to make the most sense to the people who are struggling to keep up. And so I want to challenge each and every one of you to please consider the new Green Deal or the Green New Deal. Please consider looking at how we can roll back our carbon footprint. Please consider how we can strengthen our smart energy grid and start utilizing more solar and wind and water as a power source to charge our world, because fossil fuels should be a thing of the past. And it's so unfortunate that we are so dependent on something that is causing so much financial stress and so much, as well as so much environmental stress. We could do better. My name's Alan Ellison, running for the United States Senate to represent your interests. I want to thank you for being here with us tonight as we talked about the impact of oil. Please follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all of our social media accounts, and let's continue to stay engaged. Let's continue to learn and grow with one another. Thank you very much. You have a wonderful evening.